Hello. Welcome to my conversation, and happy Friday. How's everyone's day? Excellent, right? It's an exciting time to be alive in the culinary world. Yes, of course. I will stand right here. Sorry, I got really excited. So I'll just jump right into it. This is me in the year 2012. My conversation's really about sort of a culinarian perspective on the facet of the television world. I consider myself to be, a restaurant chef with an added facet of, wanting to have the most sort of large format possible to convey my message that is food and loving through food. And that's always my message is, when I do pre-shift at my restaurant and I go through every single dish with my staff, I always say, like, what is the love? Because I always internally ask myself every day, am I conveying my most authentic, honest message? And that is my love for food through cooking. I think it's the most common language that we speak together as a human race. And I'm proud. I'm proud to make an impact and leave a legacy on this planet Earth through my message of food. So this photo, this is me sort of understanding what it is to be a chef competitor on the program Top Chef, which I had, pros and cons to. I'm I'm California native. I'm born and raised Angelino. And my sort of vibe is very authentic and chill. I surf, I skate. My restaurant's in Venice. I am authentic in that message. But, the television world's a bit different. And, that was fun. But 2012, I got to compete on a show for Top Chef in Texas. That was 30 chefs living in one household. And, all sort of competing against being the best. And Padma was one of the judges and really amazing, dynamic female in the industry. So her and I did an event together outside the show after. But, the journey as a culinarian has been excellent through TV. I did Top Chef. I did a show called Knife Fight on the Esquire Network, which I won. That was produced by a ex-Top Chef alum, so very fun. I also did a show on the Food Network called Chef Wanted, which I won as well. Yeah, I'm proud of that. I just recently opened a restaurant called Leona in Venice. We just celebrated our first year. Yes, and it is... I say this when I talk to my guests in the dining room and they ask me, how is it? I can say, oh, the nerves behind my eyeballs hurt, or this person called in today, or, this dish, whatever. But, the words that always resonate in my mind and that I mean with all of my heart is that I'm speaking my true message, and through trials and tribulations, I have an amazing staff who sees my vision, and I'm an adamant predecessor of leaving a legacy through the love of food, and they see that, Tom Colicchio was someone I very much connected with while on that show. I consider him a friend to this day who's opening a restaurant, another restaurant very soon. But, TV is a big thing for me because I really want to be able to touch as many people on this planet Earth as possible, and to really, my sort of ethos on cooking is to hug you from the inside, and to kind of touch on what the gentleman was speaking before me is that, you should understand what food is. Like, if your grandmother or your mother wouldn't understand what that is, like, those are the things I believe are the hug you from the inside type of ideas in cooking. So this is me on the Knife Fight Network, Esquire, And it's exciting. I mean, the whole creative process. This was a hamachi dish, which later went on to win in 2015 GQ's Sexiest Dish of 2015. Yes. And it's just so lovely. But it was a hibiscus cured hamachi that, even at this time, this was about 2013-ish, I didn't realize I was really paving the way for my own future, and this dish took sort of 3 different reincarnations to win that accolade through GQ, but very exciting, very exciting. So my grandmother was the first person to introduce me to cooking at 4 and 5 years old, and I knew at a very, very young age what it was to understand your palate. I remember sitting in the back of my parents' car, and we came up to my grandmother's driveway in Gardena, where there's a large Korean population. My grandmother's side is Korean, my father's side is black, and I grew up in a very distinct biracial background. So like when we went to grandmother's house, I remember it was like very strict and disciplined, and like I had to eat with chopsticks, and it was like kimchi and all kinds of fermented foods that I didn't understand, but it was exciting to me because it wasn't like what I ate at school, and it wasn't like my mom cooked that way every once in a while, but it wasn't like what we ate every day. So they were like calling us to like Asian persuasion or whatever in this photo, but she was the one who really instilled like flavor and understanding food through culture at a very young age. And one particular story where I remember what I knew what flavor was, and it's kind of silly, but it's only now that I am able to reflect on these moments and kind of look up from the cutting board and like, who am I as a culinarian in this world? And I remember there was a now and later, and it was a banana now and later in the back of my parents' car. And, I think it was like hot or summer, and I ate it, and it was like soft, and I was like, oh, wow, this is so much better than eating it when it was like, rip your teeth out sort of feel. And I remember like being conscious of that, and I think as silly as it sounds, that was my earliest memory of understanding temperature and texture and flavor, and like, wow, this is a completely different experience, So, subconsciously throughout my lifetime, I just celebrated a birthday last Tuesday. I've been in this business professionally and dedicated all of my lifeline to be the best for about 15 years now. But, it really happened in those early stages. And, my parents put me in martial arts at a very young age, and I think that mindset helps, the discipline, as a creative and as a chef, you really have to be sort of right side of the brain, left side of the brain, creative and analytical, working in one. And it's a challenge, A lot of my chef friends and I talk about this a lot, is it takes a particular type of human being to be a chef, and to be great at it. And, when those like atoms and bonds find each other, it's magical, it's electric. And greatness happens, and legacy happens, and meaningful conversations as this happen. So, I nourish that subconsciously and consciously. But, I was the weirdo kid who would run home from school and watch like Julia Child, and like, I watched her whip egg whites in a bowl once, and it was beyond my comprehension. Like 14 years old, I was like, wow, like how do you take something natural and create, a meringue, a marshmallow, a taffy, or like with egg whites, with just manipulating it with force. So I remember like I went in the kitchen, I got my cereal bowl, and like, got this like shitty whisk and like whipped egg whites. My mom was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, I want to whip egg whites, it looks cool. Like, and just memories like that, like constantly remind me that I'm on the life path that I'd chosen, making the efforts to be great at it, and everyone, it's a learning process. But when I was a kid, 9 years old, and my dad reminded me of this just recently. We have this huge chef's counter at the restaurant, and he sat and we reflected. And it was a moment in time for me to be in my restaurant, right, with my dad. And he said, Nyesha, do you remember when you used to play restaurant when you were a kid? And I was like, yeah, haha. He's like, you used to call your restaurant A+1 good restaurant. And I was like 9 years old, like, don't know anything. And I just remember always wanting to make soup, and like I loved noodles, and like I'd invite my friends over and make forts and like do silly things. But restaurant was always my blood. And I remember like just knowing, I just had an eye for it and would see it as we drove past places. I just love it. But so I'm fortunate to have had an avenue to be seen as a creative, and people want to embark on that journey with me. So doing Top Chef doesn't define me really as a culinarian. It's great, but my culture, my life, like who I am as an individual, I like to reside in the most authentic message possible, and that's like, what's honest. So in 2014, I revisited Top Chef and said, let me go back and retry this TV thing. And I went on Top Chef duels, and I had lost again, and I don't like losing. But it's all good. I think I win in real life, so that I get asked to do a lot of things, and as I will embark on what I feel is I'm just getting started on my real journey of defining myself as a culinarian and leaving my legacy. I just always want to, leave an authentic message. And, I got to meet some really great friends. This gentleman, Chris Crary, and I became best of friends. He's like my brother, but he opened a restaurant not too long ago. And we did Top Chef together. And just did Outstanding in the Field last week together, but an amazing visionary for culinary excellence. And I'll continue to do that and continue to open more restaurants and continue to build more young people and continue to be a creative mindset and offer authenticity and legacy and staying power, in a world where things can be a little bit fickle. Nowadays, I think it's important to always look within yourself and find that true message, and you can't really go wrong. But that's sort of my journey thus far, and I really, really, really thank you for spending a few minutes with me and listening to that. And so that's all I have to say for now, unless you have any questions.